In this lesson, we'll be creating a background plate and a calibrated camera in Cinema 4D. Okay, so to get started here, you can see that we've got this zombie carcass here on our grid for you to look at. And it's already modeled out for us, so this is what we're going to be animating to kind of match up with our movements of our live action plate. Now, our live action plate is what we need to bring in here as our background so that we can match the movements of our carcass that we're going to animate along with the movements of the actor in the footage. So to get started, let's add a background. I'm going to come up here to where you see the floor button, click and hold, and we'll drop in this background. And then we need to create a texture that can be placed on that background and seen as our animation or our live action plate. So go ahead and go to Create, New Material. We'll double click that new material. And we want to add the video of our live action plate to the luminance, because the specular and the color are going to allow that background plate to have other kinds of data attributed to it later on when we start adding other things. So go into your luminance and check that on. And right here where you see texture, we want to come over here to browse for different textures from our files that we can use. Okay, so I'm inside of your project files whenever I click that. So you need to navigate to those project files now, and we're going to go into your reference files folder. So we'll double click here, and I'm going to double click inside the zombie live action folder also. Now here we've got a zombiecrawl.avi and zombie crawl with all the different frames. And then we've also got this final frame here, which we'll use as our clean plate later on. But basically, the reason why you have this same live action plate in two different forms, in an AVI and in a PNG sequence, is because nuke-like sequences and for a texture like this, Cinema 4D wants a compressed video file. So we'll be using the zombiecrawl.avi, and anytime you need to add an animated background plate in Cinema 4D, you'll want to have some sort of a video clip instead of a sequence. So once you've got that selected, go ahead and hit open, and you do want to copy this to the project location so that it can see the texture there. Okay, and now we'll go ahead and we can rename this really quickly. We'll call this our live action. And then we can X out of that material editor, and then we want to add our live action texture to the background. So now you can see that if I hold Alt and left click to rotate around this, that background never moves. So it doesn't really have any kind of 3D data on it. Now you could go in and start trying to move your scene around here to kind of get that in place on your zombie's back. But the best way to do this is to actually add your camera and calibrate it, because you have to have your camera later on, so you might as well have it calibrated and really get this right, get the angle perfect. So to do this, we'll come up here to camera and add just a regular camera, and you want to be looking through this camera, and then we'll come over here to your tags and we'll add a camera calibration tag. So go to tags, Cinema 4D tags, camera calibrator. And then with your camera calibrator tag selected, we'll go to your calibrate tab and click on add a line. Now, luckily, this plate is perfect for this because we've got these two lines just right there ready to be used. So we'll go ahead and grab the end of one of these lines just by left clicking, and I'm just going to line it right up with the corner of that painted line on the road. And then we'll grab the other end by left clicking and we'll drop it on also just right there. Now we need to what axis we want this to be. So if we're looking at our zombie guts, if I select this, you'll see that that is our z-axis, and this is our x-axis, and then our y-axis is up and down. So we want this to be oriented where our z-axis basically is going in that general direction. You can see that if I kind of try to move this around, that's what it's going to look like. So what I need to do is go into my camera calibration tag and select that line, and then I'll shift click right here in the middle. You see that changes colors. So what that's doing is it's defining what axis that's going to be. So if I shift click it again and again, now that's my z-axis. Perfect. Let's do this another time over here on this line. So we'll add another line and put it in position along this other painted line on the road. And we'll shift click it 3 times until that becomes our z-axis. Now I'm going to do something slightly different. We're going to add a grid. So when you add a grid, we'll be able to use this poster board to really get a good idea of what is going on in this space. So then you can just click the edges of that grid and align them with the poster board. And this is really going to help establish what our main grid should look like. Okay. So now, again, we need to define our axes. So we'll come over here first, and I'm going to shift click. And we want this one to be blue, so it aligns with our other line. Shift click again until this one is blue. And then on this side, we'll shift click this one to be our red. So you can see how that really starts to change things. Okay, so now our grid has been established. And you can start to change things if you wanted to, but you really don't need to at this point. This is our world axis 0 point, and our camera has been calibrated, so you really don't want to go in and start changing a lot of things. We really just want to start moving our model around to line up with our zombie now that the camera is calibrated. So, because we don't want to accidentally move that camera, I'm going to add a protection tag to it, because as long as we're looking through this, we might accidentally move the camera. So if this is unchecked, we can do that, move around just fine, but we don't want to accidentally uncalibrate our camera. So what I'll do is come up here to tags, go to Cinema 4D tags, and add the protection tag to the camera. So if it accidentally gets dropped onto something else, you can just bring it up there. And now looking through my camera, if I'm Alt and left clicking right now, holding down Alt and left clicking, I can't rotate anymore. I have to come out of that camera view to be able to rotate around. So that just helps to make sure that your camera's calibration is maintained. And also it's going to help you to keep that zombie carcass in the right place. So now that our camera has been calibrated and we've got our background in place, now I want to start creating some procedural textures to kind of define the different parts of our zombie carcass. And that's going to make it easier once we start animating to just kind of differentiate which piece of guts is this, and is this bone or is this another part of guts. It's just going to make it a little bit easier. So stick around, and then the next lesson we'll start creating our textures.